thought of kind of an interesting problem for evolutionists, and a lot of you guys are going to enjoy this video, especially those who like to use critical thinking and want to kind of wrestle with the issues when this video is done. So I'm just going to raise a few questions which I want you guys to do your best to answer, and I'm going to give you kind of my own interpretation and my own answers, and then you guys can do whatever you want with them. So let's begin by asking a simple question. How complex is a human being? Now, a lot of people are going to take that in a lot of different ways, so let's try to simplify it in terms of coming up with a number.
I'm like angry at numbers.
A number of, how many parts go into a human being. So I came up with kind of a way of doing that. I figured, well, we have about 206 bones in our body. We have about, over a dozen organs. We have, I think the number is 100 billion neurons in our brain. We have about 500 million blood vessels. We have about 500 million nerves and nerve endings and dendrites and all kinds of interesting things going on. So you add these all up and you need to come up with, a number.
Do you know the answer?
Something we can all agree on. So I figured the number is somewhere between 1 trillion and 10 trillion. And I think, most people can agree that, yeah, if I was going to build an average human being, I'd need about 10 trillion, parts. And I think we can all, between that number, 1 and 10 trillion, and if we all can sort of agree on that number, we can continue. Does everyone agree?
Oh, no.
Good. So let's raise another question. How many changes have to be made between a single cell all the way to a human being, an average human being? Well, I would think about 1 to 10 trillion, because evolutionists believe that 2 billion years ago, I don't know how they think they know this, but whatever, let's give it to them for now. Let's say that a single cell began to mutate and evolve 2 billion years ago, and it had to, undergo a lot of changes, and eventually, through progressive generations, became a human being. So how many changes would have had to have taken place? Well, I think about 1 to 10 trillion. That seems reasonable to me. So if we take the amount of time, 2 billion years, and divide it by the amount of changes, which is 1 to 10 trillion, you're left with a number between 20 to 2,000 changes per year. Minimum. That would be your average.
Whoa. I think I just figured something out.
So, here's my question to evolutionists. Obviously, if you believe life went from a single cell to the complexity of a human being in 2 billion years, that means a certain amount of changes would have had to have taken place. And if we look under a microscope at any given form of life, be it plant, animal, or even single-celled organisms, and we do not see the average amount of changes we would expect in order to facilitate the amount of changes necessary to go from a single cell to a human being in the amount of time that you guys claim that this happened, then we must conclude that you are wrong.
What's with you, dumbass?
That seems reasonable to me, doesn't it? So, the question is, do we see 20 to 2,000 changes, physical changes, in any given life form per year?
Can you, repeat the question a few times?
Which, if we say, let's make an average lifespan of, say, 50 to 100 years, I mean, that's like you can see the numbers growing quite radically. How many changes would have to take place in any given life form during the duration of its lifetime? We simply don't see those changes. Now, how do I know that we don't see those changes? Well, when we ask an evolutionist, how long does it take to show us evolution? Because whenever we say, can you show us evolution happening today, what's the response? You guys know it. You guys know it as well as I do. They say, put your hand up if you've heard this, it takes millions and billions of years. Don't they say that? Of course they say that. It's so much, they say it so much it's like basically a stereotype. But that's what they say. So let's be generous, because we as Christians, we enjoy being generous. So let's drop the billions, let's drop the millions, which is plural. Let's just say it takes about 1 million years per change. Well, if a human being is about as complex as 1 to 10 trillion, and one change per year, one change per million years, well, that's 1,000,010 trillion years, which is more zeros than I could possibly fathom.
Yeah, there's like too many of them and stuff.
So they're obviously not going to say that, it takes 1,000,000 years for a change. So if you're an evolutionist, never again can you say it takes millions of years for evolution to happen. Because number one, that would take far too much time. You would never be able to go from a single cell to a human being in 2 billion years if, it's only one change per million years. So evolution must, if it exists, must happen much quicker than that. About 20 to 2,000 changes per year.
Numbers suck.
So let's figure out if those changes are taking place. Because we can't push it back into the past anymore. We can't say, well, it's going to take 1,000,000 years for a change to take place, because, well, that simply would be impossible with the time that we need to go from a single cell to a human being, which we've all agreed for what the evolutionists are saying is about 2 billion years. So evolution must be taking place a lot quicker than that if evolution is true. So, do we see those changes? Well, by virtue of the fact that they tell us it takes, millions of years for changes to take place, shows us that no, we're not observing these changes. So they might say, well, on a genetic level, yes, there are all kinds of changes going on. Well, when people ask, us who believe in God, they say, can you show us God? And if you don't show me God, I'm not going to believe. Well, it's very easy to say genetic changes take place, but unless you show me, I'm not going to believe it. I'm certainly not going to believe that these genetic changes are the types of changes that will become physical attributes over any given amount of time unless you can show me. What I'm basically saying is the 10 trillion or 1 trillion differences between a human being and a single cell are not simply genetic. They are physical. They are physical manifestations of these traits. So to say that genetic changes are taking place doesn't really help your cause. We need 10 to 2,000 physical changes per year for the lifetime of any given organism, which is simply not happening.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, it's not.